I'm making that big bet that I'm going to keep buying ETH because I believe that there's going to be so much more people buying it in the future. I need to get in now because my long-term price targets for ETH, like I don't give investment advice, but I give long-term price targets. It's like 100K plus is my long-term price target for ETH, like 5-10 years sort of thing. And given that ETH is only 2,700 today, that's a pretty good return over the next, 5 to 10 years.
When you're looking at Ethereum in the next couple months, like what are the biggest challenges on your mind?
Getting the merge done, I think that's been the biggest challenge for a long time. It's a big problem. It's a problem that research has been working on for like almost a decade now. It's a problem that developers have been working on for several years, and like now, finally testing, finally getting quite close to actually getting it out there. So I think that's the merge is going to be this big moment that the entire Ethereum ecosystem is really looking at and focusing on, and people have a lot of big hopes and expectations for.
In the meantime, we're seeing that the fees are coming down. There's been this deflationary from the burning of ETH. What do you say to the developers who are kind of frustrated with this and are looking at other layer 1 alternatives?
Yeah, I think scaling is aside from the merge, definitely Ethereum's biggest problem at the moment. And there are a lot of different projects that are working to fix it. So there are the layer 2 teams, for example. Optimism, Arbitrum, Metis, Starknet, ZK Sync, Loopring, this longer and longer list of projects. Then on top of that, there's all of the work that's been happening on sharding, and there's been a lot of really good progress on that. And I think there's a lot of community will to put a huge amount of effort into it. Research effort starting now, but development effort once the merge is closer to being finished, and we're past that step. Then all the eyes are going to turn on to sharding and giving us some more scalability. So I'm confident that Ethereum is going to be much more scalable a year from now than it is today. And even Ethereum today, I think rollups are much further ahead than they were a year ago. Right, a year ago, doing anything on a roll-up was basically unrealistic, and they barely existed. And now, roll-ups are just a regular part of people's lives on Ethereum.
It just comes back to supply and demand. If there is not enough supply and too much demand, the price goes up. This is the golden rule for absolutely everything in life. No matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's a crypto asset or a stock or a bond or a physical good. If there is less of it and there's more demand than can be met, prices go up. Simple as that. This is, and in crypto, within assets, ETH has a lot of demand for it, right? But it also has a supply side. It has the supply side where we mint new ETH every block to pay miners to validate the network, to secure the network. Same is true for post-merge or in proof of stake, we'll be paying validators. That's the supply side. The demand side, and also obviously people selling their ETH that maybe they held it for a while and they wanted to sell. That's all new ETH kind of entering the market there. Then there's the demand side, which is use ETH to pay fees, right? And that most of that ETH gets burned. So that is an obviously massive demand sink. As you mentioned, ETH does a lot of fee revenue. It's tens of millions of dollars a day. That's tens of millions of dollars of ETH being burned a day. ETH's demand for use as collateral within DeFi. So to actually use it as an asset, whether that's being kind of in a liquidity position or borrowing against it. ETH's use in staking. So in proof of stake, you obviously, instead of using mining equipment, you use your actual ETH, you stake it, you get a reward for doing so, you put your ETH on the line, essentially, you lock it up. So it's 32 ETH per validator there. There's 9 million ETH or something staked right now, which is 7 or 8% of the supply locked up right now. You have ETH's natural demand as a store of value. So people maybe just want to hold it. They just want to say, okay, well, I don't want to hold the fiat. I want to hold ETH because I believe ETH's going to go up over time for the reasons I just outlined, and they hold it at that. So there's a lot of demand. But the thing is that the way the markets work in the short to medium term is that there are phases of accumulation and redistribution. So what ends up happening during sideways periods, you have an accumulation and redistribution phase where you have a lot of people kind of selling, right? You have a lot of demand, a lot of supply coming to the market, and you don't have a lot of demand, right? You have a lot of people that are buying for the future, but you don't have that rush of new kind of retail investors flooding in with all their money to buy this thing up really quickly. That's why we have bull bear markets and sideways markets and all this sort of stuff. Whereas when there is that rush, when the accumulation phase is kind of like done, where the redistribution phase is kind of done, and there's not enough sellers left and there's growing demand, it can quickly go up from there, right? We've seen this play out plenty of times where it starts off and then boom, it goes up really, really quickly because there's just like a flood of demand that comes in. Then it comes down really quickly because there's a flood of supply that comes in, people taking profits, right? People are going to take profits. It's just a law of it. And that's why it's so volatile. Over the long term, ETH has been a phenomenal investment, right? Yes, it's not at all-time high right now, but ETH has not been over $2,700 for most of its life. Most of its life was spent at like $100 and $300 during 2018 and 2019 and stuff like that, and even 2020. And it's only been higher than $2,700 for a few weeks, really, if you kind of like look at the charts. So I think we're taking all that into account. When we do have another flood of demand coming in to ETH, there's just not going to be much ETH around people to buy because the supply side is really not much. As I said, we're burning so much ETH from fee revenue. I think we're burning, we're at a net reduction of 70% of the new issuance. So all the new ETH being issued is being offset by the burn, which is 70% offset. So we've essentially cut issuance by 70%. And then that issuance is actually getting cut by another 80 to 90% come the merge in potentially June. So really the supply side is going to dry up massively, and you're still going to have that natural demand, and then any extra demand that comes in, I believe, is going to push the price up very quickly. It's just that during these periods of sideways accumulation action, there's actually a lot of people who don't want the price to move too fast because they're trying to buy up, right? There's a lot of whales, they like to buy up. Maybe they took profits higher and they're like, okay, I need to get a position again. So that's why I always take the long-term approach. It's much easier, much saner. It's doesn't, you have less stress, but there is a danger there where not everything outperforms over the long term. There's a lot of projects that are just crappy projects that doesn't matter how long you look at, they've just failed and they're never going back to their previous all-time highs, and you're better off just selling and reinvesting into something else. But with ETH, when it comes to ETH, for me, all I've seen with ETH is that like all the metrics keep going up and to the right. There's so much going on in the ecosystem. There's I just see so much more demand coming in the future. I'm making that big bet that I'm going to keep buying ETH because I believe that there's going to be so much more people buying it in the future. I need to get in now because my long-term price targets for ETH, like I don't give investment advice, but I give long-term price targets. It's like 100K plus is my long-term price target for ETH, like 5-10 years sort of thing. And given that ETH is only 2,700 today, that's a pretty good return over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's how I think about it. I mean, I could talk about ETH as an asset all day, every day for a long time, how good it is as an asset and all the reasons why it should be worth a lot more than what it even is today. I think if you did like a fair value on ETH today, based on its fee, I think just its fee revenue alone, it should be worth $12,000 or $13,000 just based on that. So already today, just based on current kind of like just fair value, these are kind of like measurements that are used in the traditional finance ecosystem for traditional companies, it should be worth that. So I just look at all of that and I'm like, I'm comfy holding ETH. Doesn't matter if it halved in a few weeks. I don't care. Like over the long term, I believe ETH's going to go like much higher than what it is today. The short term is what I like to call a random walk, where you can walk in a kind of like straight line, right? But the thing is that the market doesn't do that. The market walks like this, right? Left, right, and you never know which direction it's going to go. It can go left, it can go right, it can go, slightly left, slightly right, hard left, hard. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't walk in a straight line. So in the short term, there's no use. And then you see this play out on the charts as well. The charts over the short term is this, right? The charts over the long term for the good assets is this. Just a nice straight line up for most of the assets. And you can barely even see that, depending on what chart you're looking at. If you have like 100 analysts pointing out something, well, just by law of large numbers, there's going to be some of those analysts that were quote unquote right, but it could have just been a random guess, right? They just as easy, the other ones could have been right. But I do think that's why the short term is so volatile, because everyone's trying to be right and no one really knows. But the long term is based on the fundamental value and the fundamental demand. And I only do it for ETH. I don't talk about any other assets because really I only have this strong conviction on ETH at the end of the day. The last thing that maybe I wanted to say was, I guess we were just briefly talking about the markets. I think there's a lot of new people in the ecosystem right now who haven't experienced bear markets or sideways markets or losing money. And I think if you're in it for the right reasons, and the right reasons being in it for the tech, and you actually care about what's being built and you're a long-term investor, there's no use worrying about the short-term price movements, because if you said to yourself, well, I'm going to invest in ETH and it's going to be a 5-year investment, why are you worrying about what it does week to week? Like, were you going to sell this week? If you actually were going to stick to your 5-year investment plan, then you weren't going to sell. So it really doesn't matter. You should, technically you should be looking at these kind of things as a buying opportunity, right? If you've got a 5-year time horizon. So I think just getting into the mental model of not worrying about the day-to-day, week-to-week, or even month-to-month price movements, if you're a long 5+ year term investor, is the best position to be in. And I see too many people worrying about the day-to-day when they didn't even plan to sell, didn't plan to do anything. Like it's actually bizarre to me why you would even worry about it if you're not planning to sell for a very long time and you want to see the Ethereum vision come to life.